I'm so glad that you're here. I'm going to talk about retirement. And just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I have been retired for 5 years now. I can't believe it's been that long. But I'm still working part-time. And for those of you who think that we in ministry never retire, well, that's true. And I understand that. I am still working for several reasons. I'm working because I feel called. That's number one. Number two, I wanted to do more into my retirement so that I would have my wife well taken care of. And so I wanted to make more contributions into my retirement. And that's part of it. Another part of it is I enjoy what I do. And so that's a part of that decision. Another part of that decision is we wanted to travel. And last year, we made 5 trips. We made 5 trips. We went to Ireland. We went on a cruise. We went to Boston. We went to Texas to see family. You know, we traveled. And I wanted to be able to travel. And so I didn't want to worry about, not having enough. I'm retired, I'm on a fixed income, I don't have enough money to do that. So there's a number of reasons that I'm still working, and I wanted to kind of just tell you a little bit about my story. Been retired for 5 years. A lot of times this workshop, we have one of the Guidestone guys come and do it. But especially this year, I wanted to do it because I'm there. I've been retired for 5 years, and so that's why I'm doing it this year. I do want to explain a little bit about I'm doing this differently than I ever do it in terms of my setup. I had triple bypass surgery a little less than 2 months ago. And so normally I stand the whole time. I'm not going to do that. Normally I don't have a microphone for a group this size. Ken, can you hear me in the back? Are you okay? I can't hear it, but could y'all hear the amplification? Good. So I wanted to do all that because I'm not as strong as normal. And my voice is not as strong as normal, so I wanted to be able to not have to worry about that sort of stuff. So that's a little bit about me, and I want to tell you that retirement is really, really different than you think it's going to be. And we're going to talk about a bunch of those ways. Now, primarily today, we're going to talk about financial. But there's a whole lot more to it than the financial aspect. So as we get started, let's have a word of prayer. Father, thank you so much for today, and thank you for everybody who's come. Thank you for the ministry that they do. Thank you for their heart and their desire to serve you. And we just pray that today will be very beneficial and valuable to each person as we think about these things called retirement. Help us to be clear of mind, that we might understand a few things financially that are a little difficult, and so help us to be clear and help us to understand. Thank you for everyone who's here. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so let's talk about retirement. So first of all, this is retirement. This is retirement. It's a roller coaster. And it is. It's a lot of things. It's a whole lot of things. And I have discovered that. People were telling me, but I didn't really realize it until I got here. And by the way, as a part of our travel, not last year, but the year before, we went to Dollywood with our nieces, and we did do that roller coaster. And that's the toughest one I've ever been on. First of all, you're not really inside something, your feet are dangling. And that's very, very strange. And second of all, it's going to go upside down, but it's also going to go in a corkscrew. So I didn't think I could do that. I thought, man, that's going to make me sick, but I made it. So that is a good picture of retirement. It is a roller coaster. And everything about your life is going to be different. And so you just need to be kind of prepared for that. So retirement is a whole lot an emotional thing as well as a financial thing. And some of those things emotionally is that you've gone from invincible to not so much. And I never knew that until this year. Last year, when we did all those trips, we went to Gatlinburg and I did Kleeman's Dome. How many of y'all have walked that hike? That's a tough hike. And then also we went to, year before we went to Disney World with our nieces, walked 20,000 steps a day, all those days. And I'll tell you, I thought, man, if you could do Kleeman's Dome and if you can do 20,000 steps a day, your heart must be in really good shape. And not necessarily so. So this year, had a guy, when you go to the hospital, everybody who sees you is going to ask you your name and your birth date. And so you're going to be telling them, that they do that before they do touch you, do anything. And so this guy said, he asked me my birth date, and he said, wow, 70, you sure don't look 70. And I said, well, I don't feel 70 until now, until now. So everything is going to be different. You're going to go from invincible to not so much. Second thing is you might do continued work. You might want to do continued work. You might feel called to do continued ministry. You might need to do continued work to have enough money. And so just be prepared that that's a possibility. Another thing is that you might move to be near your children or grandchildren, and that's exactly what we did. Never dreamed. In fact, we built our home in Pike Road, and we thought this is our forever home. We'll never move, and never want to move. We're never going to do it. We're stuck here. And that was not true. I retired in September of 2019. Our first grandson was born October of 2019. They were in Huntsville by March 2020. By March 2020, we had already put a deposit on a house in Huntsville. We were ready to go see that grandchild. And so you might move. Now that move might mean I'm going to be in a different church. Can I find another church to be like this one? Can I find a church where we'll be happy? Can I make new friends at this age? Can I kind of start all over with a whole lot of new friends? Now, you're still going to have your old friends. Lynette came down with me today, and she's seeing, old friends from here. And so that's what she's doing. And so you still have those friends, but, you might need to make a whole new set of friends. And you might move, and you might be in a totally different setting. And that's kind of part of it. There's a lot of people who do retire, and at some point during their retirement, they move. You might need a new church because of move and stuff. You might want to do travel, and that may be your big thing. But then also I want to say your hobbies might change out of necessity. A lot of people retire and they're saying, hey, I'm gonna play golf every day. I'm gonna retire and I'm gonna go fishing every day. And I can't think of what would prevent you from fishing. But I'll tell you, in fact, when I did my retirement party here, it was a golf theme. It was a golf theme, and I said, Dr. Lance, I would like for everybody to wear a golf shirt. And see, I knew that he would have a coat and tie on if I didn't say that. Now the other people, they'd be glad to wear a golf shirt, but I knew that he'd be in a suit and tie. So I said, I'd like for everybody to wear a golf shirt, and I was asking him to wear a golf shirt, and he did. And Doug found this little putting green, and we had a club and a ball, and you could go do that as a part of the activities of my retirement. It was totally a golf theme, and that was one of the things that I intended to do during my retirement, was play a whole lot of golf. My grandfather retired. He played golf 5 days a week, and he loved it. Rain or shine, snow, whatever. In fact, they went out to the golf course one time, and it had been snowing and it's icy, and they slid off into a ditch. And he told somebody came by to help, and he said, well, no, you don't need to help me, but go up to the golf course and tell them what happened, and ask them to bring the tractor to pull us out of the ditch. And my grandfather said, he'll know who did it. He'll know who's in the ditch. And sure enough, they did know. He played 5 days a week, no matter what. And that's one of the things that I intended to do. And there was a time in my life that I did play a lot. But since I have retired, I can't see the ball. I can't see where it went. And when you play like I do, that's important to be able to see. If you always hit it in the fairway, you don't have to worry about that. But if you play like I do, you have to worry about where did it go. And then the other thing is I'm diabetic. I'm type 1 diabetic, and so I couldn't make a whole round without my blood sugar going too low. So I'll go to Top Golf, and we'll do that. But I thought that would be my everyday hobby. It's not. It's not. So you've got to be ready for all these emotional things that can happen when you retire. But today we're going to focus mainly on the financial things, and that's what we're going to be talking about. But just be aware that retirement is a whole lot of things. Not just the financial side. So let's see. So today we're going to talk about factors. We're going to be talking about that it lasts a long time. You could be retired 30 years. We're going to talk about that inflation does not retire, and everybody in this room knows that. We're going to talk some about some key retirement ages, and we're going to talk about some common misconceptions about retirement as we go. Now, you've got some materials in your packet, and so be aware. I'll ask you to take those things out as we go and as we get ready. So let's talk about some things about. I'll skip on. All right. So, how long might I live in retirement? And that could be 30 years. And we all know that the life expectancy of people here in America, for women it's about 80. For men it's around 75. That's kind of the latest thing. And so, but if I make it to 65, then what's my life expectancy? And so for women, it's 86. If you make it to 65, you're expected to make it to 86. Your life expectancy is that long. But for men, it's about 83 point something. So if you make it to 65, you're likely to make it another pretty close to 20 years. Women more so, more than 20 years. And so retirement is something that lasts a long time. And you've got to be prepared for a long time. So it is a major life change that's going to last for years and years. Now, let's look at inflation is not going to retire. And in fact, if we thought about it, some things that from a long time ago and kind of what they cost, and I thought this chart was interesting. If we were to look at the 1980s, if we were looking at the 1980s, what was the cost of a postage stamp? Well, back then it was 16 cents. Anybody know what stamps are these days? I don't even know. 60 something cents. Yeah. 73. Wow. See, I don't even know. I don't even know what it is anymore. But that's a big change from 40 years ago. If we were looking at the 1980s and what was a loaf of bread, you could buy a loaf of bread for 50 cents. Now we're spending several dollars. What was gasoline? And it was 97 cents, and it's around $3, $3.15 a gallon here in Alabama. Here in Alabama now. Now this is one that's really a shocker. What would be a regular car? They say domestic 4-door back in the 80s. $6,900 that you could buy a car. What is the average price for a car that people are paying now?
40.
Yeah, it's in fact it's average they're paying for a vehicle, which I know that includes trucks and stuff, is like $48,000 is the average that people are paying for a new vehicle. And you know what they're paying for a used vehicle these days? Average is $25,000 for a used vehicle. Now I remember when I had a friend of mine that he would buy a used Cadillac, and he would buy it like a year to 2 years old, and he could get it for like $16,000. So because it depreciated so much. Of course you can't do that today. But average price of a used vehicle these days is $25,000. And we saw this, years ago, 9% increase in the cost of living in 1 year. That's huge. So you got to take that into account, and you got to think about that, about the cost of inflation. So my parents had a very, very good retirement. My dad retired in 1986, and he had a very, very, very good retirement. My mom lived to be 95. And so after my dad died, and it was just my mom, she had essentially his retirement plus Social Security. And we saw those end years, the inflation made a huge difference in the buying power of that money. So at first, when they retired, they traveled a lot, kind of like we wanted to do. They did a lot. They had plenty of money, but by the time she was 95, the buying power of that money was not near what it was. So you'll want to think about that, about inflation. All right. So what are some retirement dates that have some kind of meaning to us? Now, this first one you probably won't know. I don't expect anybody in this room to know it. What's any significance to the age 55?
Discounts.
Yeah, AARP. Yeah. Well, actually, age 50 or AARP.
Can you withdraw from some of your?
You can. If you want to retire, and you set up a retirement payback that is according to your life expectancy, then you can retire and not get hit with the 10% penalty. But you've got to retire, and you've got to set that up pay-wise that way. Otherwise, what's this next number, 59 and a half?
You can draw from like your IRAs and stuff without penalty.
Yeah, that's the first time that you can withdraw from retirement vehicles and IRAs without the 10% penalty. Now, when you take money out of your retirement, now if you put money in the traditional way, which that'd be most of us, then you take that money out, what's going to happen to that money tax-wise? It's taxable when we take it out. Now, if you did a Roth version and you take that money out, it's not taxable. You paid the taxes already. But if you have traditional retirement savings, which that would be true of most of us in this room, then you take the money out and it's taxable income. Okay? So age 59, if you take money out of your retirement at say age 50 or before, you take money out, you've got the tax plus a 10% penalty. And age 59 and a half is the first time that you don't have that penalty. Okay? So age 59 and a half. What's the significance of age 62?
Social Security.
First time that you could start Social Security if you want to. You can start your Social Security at age 62 on up to age 70. Anytime in there you can start your Social Security. And we're going to talk about, well, what happens if I start at age 62? What's going to happen to my Social Security check? Social Security check. And so we'll talk about those things. What's age 65?
Medicare.
Medicare. That's when you can and should sign up for Medicare. Now, those of you who are employees at State Board of Admissions, we have an HSA eligible health care, and so there is a little different than if you're still going to be contributing to your HSA, you can't sign up for Social Security yet. Well, in other words, if you sign up for Social Security, you can't contribute to your HSA anymore. So ask Julie or me or somebody about that decision when you get there. But for the rest of us, having a regular kind of insurance, then age 65, you'll want to sign up for Medicare, at least sign up for Part A, which is the hospitalization. So age 65 is time for sign up for Medicare. What is the significance of age? The next age, full retirement age, and for a lot of you in this room, it's going to be age 67. Age 67. What's the significance of that? What does it mean, full retirement age?
You can continue to work and not have Social Security penalized.
Yeah. If I'm receiving Social Security and I want to keep on working, then when I hit full retirement age, I won't get penalized and some of my Social Security money taken away. So if I'm 62 and I want to sign up for Social Security, but I still want to work, and I can only make 21,000 something this year, can't remember the exact number, but it's about 21,000. And that number changes every year. But if I make more than that from working, then some of my Social Security benefit will be taken away. And it's $1 for every $2 extra that I make over that $21,000 limit. Some of my Social Security check will be taken away if I'm like age 62, 63, 4, 5, so forth. But once I'm full retirement age, and for many of you in this room, it's age 67. Once I'm full retirement age, then I can make any amount of money, and it won't matter anymore. Okay, my Social Security check won't be reduced. Okay, what's another thing about full retirement age? That's when I would get my full retirement Social Security check. You know, before that is reduced. If I start Social Security at age 62, I'm going to get less than if I waited until full retirement age of for many of you, 67. Okay? What's the significance of age 70? Yeah. Well, I put it correctly in there. What's the significance of age 72?
Is that we have to withdraw some from your accounts?
Yeah, and well, in fact, I should have updated it to, there's another update. It's age 73 now. There is a date, it's called minimum distribution. And if I haven't started my retirement by that time, I'm gonna have to take some at that point. And so it's called required minimum distribution. Why does the government care whether we take money out of our retirement or not?
Taxes.
They want their share. They want the tax money. And this one used to be age 70 and a half. It's now age 73. And for some of you, it'll be age 75. It'll be age 75. So required minimum distribution. So those are some years that have some kind of significance with retirement. All right, common misconceptions, and I'll just kind of name these. That when we turn 65, we've got to start taking retirement. No, you don't have to. That you have to take it at like an annuity. No, you don't have to. That when I die, my spouse is only going to get half. That could happen, but it depends on the way you set it up. And if it does happen, it's your fault. You know, so that's one of the things about that. I know my mother was only entitled to half of my dad's pension. And my dad had arranged for some insurance so that she got essentially the full amount. But that was the way it was for my mom and my dad. But with Guidestone, that could happen, but if it does, you did it. You did it.
What do you do to prevent that?
You can sign up for a full, a full amount, 100% amount. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about different options that you'll have as far as withdrawing money, and if you do want to do an annuity, different options that you'll have about that annuity. All right. Another one is when you both die, your heirs get nothing. So that's possible. But again, it depends on the way you set it up. Depends on the way you set it up. And we'll talk about those options as well. And then finally, an outside advisor could do better and get you a higher return. And so not necessarily. But I would say this about Guidestone: be careful about things like that, especially if you're a minister. Especially if you're a minister, because with Guidestone, you could take your and I'm not going to talk about ministers all day today. So those of you who are not ministers, don't worry about it. But I'll say a few things. But one thing about our Guidestone retirement is they are a denominational retirement board. And they have the authority from the IRS to be able to grant us as ministers a housing allowance during our retirement years. And so you move your money to Fidelity or somebody else, no, they're not going to be able to grant you housing allowance during your retirement years. So housing allowance during your retirement years, you put this money in, you take it out as housing allowance, it comes to you completely tax-free. Completely tax-free. And so, especially ministers, you would not want to move your money to somebody else. Now, if you've got a ton of money and you want to move a small portion of it to somebody else, that's fine. But you need to have plenty of money for your housing allowance in your church retirement plan through Guidestone. And that's what you'll want to do. All right? And of course, when you turn 65, you're going to get all kinds of solicitations from everybody wanting you to do this and do that with your money. And so be careful. All right, so one of the things that you need to do is figure out how much money you need for retirement. And we want to replace somewhere between 70 and 90%, and I would lean on the higher side of that, 70 and 90% of your pre-retirement income. Now, why don't we need 100%? Why would we not need 100%?
My houses will be paid for.
Okay, that's a good one. Hopefully, your house might be paid for. What would be another reason that we wouldn't need 100%? At some point, okay, here's one. At some point, I'm not putting 10% into my retirement anymore. So if that's been the case, and I'm going to stop putting money into my retirement, then I can live on 90%, of what I used to make. What's another one? Transportation costs are going to be less because I'm not driving to work. Some of my other costs are going to be less because I'm not, I'm not having to buy as much, clothing or whatever to go to work and things like that. So you can live on less than your pre-retirement income after you retire. Now, I told you I lean on the higher side of that because you might want to do more stuff than that. You might want to do more than just live. You might want to travel. You might want to do some hobbies. You might want to do some other things. And so if you're going to do that, then you might want to lean towards 90 to 100% of your pre-retirement income. And so how do we get there? Well, and this is just a sample, if I was making $50,000, and so 80% of my pre-retirement income would be $40,000. And so $40,000 is what I need to replace. And if I'm going to get $20,000 from Social Security check, then I need to replace $20,000. And I need to get that from my retirement account or other sources of income. That's got to come from me somewhere. And so I need to figure out, well, do I have $20,000 coming to me during my retirement years from that source? And so I need to kind of calculate, am I going to have enough income to meet my needs? And if I'm not going to have enough income, then I need to figure out something else, which could be working longer, could be working part-time, could be that I adjust my need. We downsize, we don't do as much, we do this, that, and the other in order to make that balance, to make that budget work out. But so you need to figure out how much am I going to need during my retirement years. Now let me kind of give you one rule of thumb, and that is this. One of the how much money do I need? That's the big question. And one of the ways you can look at that is, one of the basic rule of thumbs is you need 10 times what you were making when you retired in income. So if I made $50,000, I need $500,000 in my retirement fund. And because that $500,000 is going to generate, depending on how I do it, that $500,000 is going to generate between $20,000 and $30,000 a year. And that plus my Social Security is going to get me close to what I was making. See how that works? So one of the rules of thumb is you need about 10 times what you're making at your last income. Now, you might hear it. There's another rule of thumb that says you need 20 times your income. But that's when you're not considering other things like Social Security. So at 20 times my income, if I was making $50,000 and 20 times that is $1 million, and $1 million could generate $40,000 to $50,000 in income. But see, that's not taking into account Social Security. Okay, so a good rule of thumb for us is 10 times our income. All right? All right, so figure out how much do you need? How much money will you need in retirement? And so the way that we would do that is we would look at a lot of calculators and things that Guidestone has. I'm not going to spend time on these, but I'm just going to mention that on their website, they've got a lot of retirement tools. And so you've got worksheets and how to figure your budget and how to figure out how much money do I need and what sources is it going to come from. And they've got some really good worksheets. All right, so my sources could be the Guidestone account, could be Social Security, could be other retirement plans that I had from another employer, my personal investments that I might have, and then another big one is continued employment. So if I figure out that, you know, I need, I'm gonna need $50,000, and what I've got coming to me from Social Security is 20, and what I've got coming to me from my Guidestone retirement account is 20, then I need another 10, and I can do that by some kind of part-time work, and I can still. And if you need to work, then you want to do this early in your retirement. You don't want to get to be 80 years of age and say, hey, I don't have enough money. I gotta make some more money. You know, you want to be doing that while you're still healthy. All right. So those are your sources of income. So Guidestone. Your income is determined by how old are you when you start, what is your account balance, and so those are the things that are going to determine how much money are you going to get. And so now what would age have to do with it?
Longer time to have to receive it.
Yeah, longer time to have to receive it.
Yeah.
So if I am 70 and I retire and my account balance is, let's just say my account balance is 400,000, I might be just as well off as somebody who was 65 or 62 and they had a $500,000 account balance, because I don't have as long to pay it out. You know, there's not as many years left. And so age is a part of it. So your account balance and your age is going to determine how much money you're going to be able to receive in income from your retirement account. So that's part of the factors. All right. And in fact, one way that we do it, it's called annuity, and you can do an annuity. And if you do an annuity, that is based on your balance and your age, because they're asking how many years do we have to pay this out? Do we have to pay it out 20 years, 25 years? Might we have to pay it out 30 years? All right, Plan A. Does anybody in this room have any Plan A money? Anybody? I didn't think so. Plan A was really a pension that we used to have through, of course, back then it was Annuity Board and the Southern Baptist Convention. And Plan A money was some pension money, but we don't have that anymore, and I didn't think anybody in this room would have it. Plan A works like a pension. A pension is something that your employer determines that you're going to receive after X number of years of work here. And it's an employer-focused fund in that they determine what benefit you're going to have. What we have is a 403B, 401k, 403B. Those are similar. And nowadays, it's not Your employer doesn't determine how much money you're gonna get during retirement, you do. You do by the account balance that you have. And it's all up to you as to whether you have enough to retire on or not. And so these are a different kind of plan from the old pension idea. And so Plan A was really a pension. All right, let's look at Social Security for a minute. And in fact, you've got a little pamphlet in your packet that says, it says Social Security maximization, which I don't know what that one is. So we need to look at a few things about Social Security as we think about that's going to be part of our retirement income. And so, first of all, what do I have to do to be eligible? How are the benefits calculated? What happens if I take it early at age 62? What are the average benefits? And then we'll talk some about Medicare. So, what do I need to do to qualify for a Social Security check? Well, the first thing is you've got to work 40 quarters, basically 10 years worth of work. You've got to work at least that long, and in order to qualify for Social Security. Now, my mom never worked 10 years. She worked some, but not 10 years worth. So my mother would not have qualified for Social Security, but she did get a Social Security check because she was a spouse. And that's another way to qualify. Sorry. Okay, all right. So you have to work 40 quarters in order to qualify. And pastors have the ability to opt out of Social Security. And sometimes they get to that Social Security age and they realize, hey, I don't have 40 quarters and I opted out of Social Security. So I've noticed some pastors to go work for Walmart to get in their last quarters to have enough to qualify for Social Security. So you've got to work 40 quarters worth of work to qualify for Social Security. How is it calculated? It's based on how much you made, how many years you worked, and it's based on the 35 highest paying years during that time. And they inflation adjusted. So work from years and years ago is inflation adjusted upwards to be comparable to how much you're making this year. And so that's what Social Security check is based on. So you've got to work 40 quarters in order to qualify. All right, how much Social Security check might we begin? So your benefit is the age that your benefits began, 35 years of work. A lot of people think that it's the last 5 years is what determines your Social Security check, but that's not true. It's 35 years. And so sometimes we might have a 0 in one of those columns. And if it is a 0, then they throw that one out and take your 35 highest years of earnings is the way that they figure it. All right, so how much money will I receive? Some of that's based on your age, the age at which you start taking Social Security. So if you were age 62, then it's going to be less than that. And these are the years for full retirement age. And in this room, most of y'all are going to be age 67. If you were born in 1960 or later, your full retirement age is going to be age 67. Now you could start Social Security at age 62, but you'll get less. You'll get less money. And if you start at your full retirement age, probably age 67, then you get the full amount. If you wait till age 70 or any part of that, age 69, 68, 69, 70, then you would get a larger benefit than normal. Now, here's a key factor that people don't think about, and they think about, well, I want to start my Social Security at age 62, and I know I'll get a reduced benefit, but how much will that be reduced? And if you were part of my group that you could have retired when you were age 66, then your benefit is reduced, let's say 25%. 25%. But if you are part of the group that's going to retire and you're age 60, 1960 or later is your birth date, then if you started at age 62, your benefit is reduced 30%. It's reduced more. So it's a significant reduction. And that reduction in your benefit stays that way forever, except for your COLA increases, the cost of living adjustment increases each year. You would get that, but if I started with a Social Security check of $1,000 a month, and I get to age 67, what's going to happen to my Social Security check? Nothing. It doesn't go up because I turned 67. It would only go up according to the cost of living adjustment. And it would stay at that $1,000 level except for those adjustments. Whereas if I had waited till full retirement age, maybe that Social Security check would have been, $1,400 a month instead of $1,000. All right. So what's the average? The average amount of Social Security check these days is, actually, gosh, I didn't. Yes, I did. I didn't change. $18,000 a year for an individual, about $28,000 for a married couple is the average Social Security check these days, and that's now. Why is it less for a married couple than it was for the two individuals?
The wife gets half of the husband's.
Well, most of the time it's less because one didn't work all the years. One stayed home to be with kids, stuff like that. And so that's why an average Social Security check would be, $18,000, but a married couple would only be $27,000. Is they normally haven't worked as on average they haven't worked as many years total as two people individually might have worked.
So you said 35 years is what they calculate on. Is there any penalty for someone who, say, for instance, worked 30 years? I mean, that they just calculate off of 30 years.
You just have 5 zeros
Okay.
if they only work 30 years. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. All right. So that's the average Social Security check, and you might hear me talk about an average situation of somebody getting $20,000 a year from their Social Security, and that, of course, I've rounded it up a little bit, but that's what I'm talking about. That's kind of the average. All right. Ministers who opt out of Social Security. If they opted out, they were never married, they went to seminary, then they opted out, and they've never done any kind of secular work. They opted out of Social Security, they never got married, they would not receive Social Security. Just would not get it. They also wouldn't qualify for Medicare. Now, you can buy into Medicare, but that minister wouldn't qualify. Or let's say that he gets married, but his spouse is a stay-at-home mom and never worked. Then they would not qualify for Social Security. Many ministers who opt out of Social Security Many ministers do qualify for a Social Security check because their spouse is somebody who did work 40 quarters. And so a lot of them qualify that way.
And then they would also qualify for Medicare as well.
And they would qualify for Medicare by being a spouse. Uh-huh. All right, so, now, of course, we don't recommend that anybody opt out. And Guidestone doesn't, although I know that a lot of ministers here in Alabama do opt out. But that's what would happen if you opted out of Social Security. All right, so Social Security is one source of income. And personally, I believe that Social Security is going to be around for a long, long time. And it's just not going to do what it did before for the previous generation. My grandparents basically lived off of Social Security when they retired. My grandfather had a little retirement, but it wasn't much. And so they basically lived off of Social Security. For my parents' generation, it was about half of their income. For me, it's less than that. It's less than that. So I think that Social Security is going to be around, just not going to do what it used to do for previous generations. And so now Social Security does need to have changes made to the system by, really today it needs those changes. But at least by 2034, it's got to have changes made, or Social Security Administration will only pay out about 75% of what the normal Social Security check is. And if you read Social Security Administration material, almost all of it says that. Basically they're saying if Congress doesn't do anything, then by 2034, your Social Security check is going to be reduced to about 75%. And so Congress should have done something about this 20 years ago. They should do something about it this year, but they don't want to do anything that makes them lose votes. And that's a sad state of affairs, but that's the truth. That's the truth. They need to make some hard decisions. And so the hard decisions that they're going to have to make when they get desperate and know that they've got to change it, they've either got to raise taxes, they've got to reduce the benefits, or some kind of combination of both. Now, there's already talk. This is one thing that congressional people are kind of willing to do. There's talk about, there's a point at which if you make a higher income, I don't pay Social Security taxes anymore. It's $160,000, something like that. I don't ever think about that because most of our people are not in that category. But somewhere around $160,000, then you stop paying Social Security taxes. You pay it for that $160,000, but then the money beyond that, I'm not paying Social Security taxes anymore. Now, on your Medicare taxes, if you make $1 million a year, you're still paying Medicare tax, but you're not paying Social Security taxes. And one of the proposals that would help make Social Security solvent is for those people who make more than $160,000 to have to pay Social Security taxes on that extra money. And that one is probably going to happen. Probably going to happen pretty soon. Another thing they could do to Social Security to make it solvent is to increase the age. And they could increase the age to age 70. And that one is probably going to happen sometime. Now, none of this is popular to talk about. That's why the politicians don't want to talk about it. They don't want to do anything. They don't want to have to do anything that's going to make them, Social Security is something that controls, the talk of it controls a lot of votes. older people do vote to make sure that Social Security is here and make sure that it's preserved. And so politicians don't want to do anything to upset that apple cart. And so they need to do something. But that's a point at which your Social Security check could be reduced if Congress does nothing. Now, in addition to Social Security, and I kind of diverged into the thing about I think that Social Security is going to be here, it's just not going to do what it used to do. And so let's get back to our income. One of our sources of income is going to be Social Security. One of our sources of income is going to be our retirement account. And Guidestone, this is a 403B, and in fact, our plan is called a 403B9, which is a church plan. It's a specialized church plan, and that's the reason that those of you who are ministers, that you can have a housing allowance coming from your Guidestone retirement account, because that it's that kind of plan. See if there's something else I needed to say. The normal distribution of your 403B would be taxable if you put it in a traditional way. I'm putting my money in to save on taxes now, and that's the traditional way of putting it in. The other way to put in money into your account is called the Roth. That means that I'm paying the taxes now, so I won't have to pay taxes later. And Guidestone does have the Roth available. In fact, State Board of Admissions, for some of you who are State Board of Admissions employees, the Roth is available to you. And if you're not a minister, the Roth is a great idea. I'm going to pay the taxes now to not pay the taxes later. But if you are a minister, Roth would be something that I think about later on down the road. I'm going to put my money in the traditional way until I'm really good, well off for housing allowance, and then I can put some money into a Roth. But getting that housing allowance money, I'd want to put it in tax deferred. I'm putting it in saving taxes on now, and I can take that money as a housing allowance when I do retire. I won't pay taxes on it then. That's better than a Roth. I'm not paying taxes on it at either end, either now or later. So anyway, about the way that it comes to you, the tax status is normally taxable if you put it in the traditional way. Rollovers are possible. You could move your money around. You could have money in another retirement account that you had from a previous job or something like that. You can roll it over into Guidestone if you'd like to. Okay. Another one is individual IRA, and Guidestone does have an individual IRA. If you've got a spouse that doesn't work for the church and you want them to have an IRA, they can through Guidestone. Anybody can have an IRA through Guidestone. And the IRA is an individual retirement account. A 403B, a 401k, those are employer plans, meaning that it comes through your employer. Even if you want money to come out of your paycheck to go into your retirement, it's going through the employer. It's taken out of your paycheck. Your employer sends it in. And so an individual retirement account is one that a person can do on their own, apart from their job, apart from their work. You do have to have an earned income. You have to make money from working in order to have an individual retirement account, but anybody can. Well, except for spouses. You could have one person who has a retirement plan and the other have a spousal one, even if they weren't working. But generally, that money is because of work. You can have a Roth, and that means that I'm paying taxes now to not pay taxes later. All right. Other sources of income, you could have your own savings account, other kinds of brokerage accounts, things like that that are not an IRA or a 403B. And then another source of income is you could have continued work. Now you have to be careful about continued work. If you retire at age 62, I can only make, I'm using round numbers here, I can only make $21,000 before my Social Security check would be reduced. Now, that's not the end of the world. If I do make more than that $21,000, my Social Security check will be reduced. But then when I do turn full retirement age, if it has been reduced because I made too much, then at full retirement age, they will readjust my check to be a higher amount. And I think the way they readjust it is that you get paid back that money over your lifetime or life expectancy. And so I'm not going to get it all back in 1 year, but I would eventually get that money back, because I was penalized. And so eventually I'd get that back. So this chart shows you the way that it works. If I made 62, it's $1 for every $2 above the limit. If at the year that I reach full retirement age, it's only reduced $1 for every $3 over the limit. And also I can make more in that year than the $21,000 I'm talking about. And the month you receive, you get to full retirement age, you can make any amount of money and you're no longer penalized on your Social Security. Okay. Continued employment be another way to make up for lost time, lost amounts. Okay, we're going to talk about in our next session, we're going to talk about how do I take out my money. And let's take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to talk about this. How can I take my money out of Guidestone? And there's basically three ways that you can take your money. We're going to talk about all three, and this we're kind of get down to the nuts and bolts of what we wanted to do today, so that you'd understand what your options are. Let's take a 5-minute break. I remember when I was a teenager, and back in those years, you think 30 is old. So now that you get to that point, I've never thought of myself as old. In fact, my grandfather had a saying. He talked about those old men at the golf course. The old men at the golf course. Well, actually, he was the oldest one there, and so I think a whole lot like my grandfather did. But now I've got to start admitting it, that I'm getting a little older. All right, so you've got 3 basic different ways that you can take your money. If you would, take out 2 pieces of paper. First is this withdrawal strategy page, and we're not going to look at this entire thing. I want you to go to the last part of that. Let me see if it's got a page number on it. Step 3, pages are not numbered. So in this booklet, step 3, withdrawal strategy. Choose your retirement solution. And then also pull out this sheet. Pull out this one right here. It says retirement income estimate. We're going to be looking at these two pages. Looking at how can I take my money out? How do I take my money? That's what we're going to be thinking about for the next little while. What are my choices? And you do have choices. One of the things about misconceptions is that I'd have to do an annuity. No, you don't have to do an annuity. That is a choice, but it's not your only choice. So as we talk about these choices, we're basically going to be talking about 3 choices. And I'm gonna go ahead and get one of them out of the way real quick. And that is you can take a withdrawal, just a lump sum withdrawal. You can take money out of, now, past 59 and a half, past 59 and a half, so you won't be penalized. You can take a lump sum out of your retirement account. And if it's, I don't know what the maximum is of this, but you can take out a lump sum, do it online, you can get the money in about 7 days. About 7 days, and you can do that. It's a very quick, easy process.
You're not talking about rollovers here.
No, I'm talking about just doing a withdrawal. That's one way that you can take your money out. Now, the other two ways have to do with a monthly amount you're gonna receive from Guidestone. But you can just flat take out money. And of course, when you do that, it's gonna be taxable. So you need to think about that. And then the other part of that is when you do a withdrawal, Guidestone is going to send 20% of that into the IRS for withholding. And they're required to do that by IRS regulation. That's not a Guidestone thing. So if I take out $10,000 as a lump sum, I'm only gonna get $8,000 in my checking account. The other $2,000 is gonna go to the IRS. Now, at tax time, if I don't owe that $2,000, then I get some of that money back. But if I'm in a higher tax bracket, if I'm in the 22% tax bracket, I might still owe some money on that money that I took out. And so if you take out a lump sum, then Guidestone will send to the IRS 20% of that, and you won't receive it. Okay? It's easy, it's quick. Lynette had a Guidestone retirement account because of her work at the church, and we have used her money for some of the trips that we've done. And so we would do a lump sum withdrawal and get that money out, and I really appreciated how easy it was to do. Except, it's easy to do except for that 20% that went to the IRS. And so that's all there is, that really is all there is to a lump sum withdrawal. And that's one reason why it's not really talked about here, is because it's so easy. So that's one of your choices. I had a brother-in-law that he retired early. He took 100% of his money out, and
Why would you do that?
well, not too smart. But he took 100% of his money out. Why would you do that? It's gonna all be taxable, and taking it all out at once, it's gonna put you into a much higher tax bracket. It's gonna make more taxes due. It's just a real bad problem. So you don't really want to do that. I've noticed some ministers who took all their money out to pay off a house. And let me just say, that's not a good idea. First of all, you want to have that house, you don't want to have a house payment, but you want to have that for housing allowance and not to have to pay more taxes on what you're doing. But second of all, you've made a whole lot of money taxable all in 1 year. It's gonna put you in a higher tax bracket, gonna cause you to pay more taxes, and it cannot all be housing allowance. There was a guy that I had asked this question not long ago, wanted to take out $200,000 out of his retirement account, pay off his house. Well, he wanted to call it housing allowance. And one of the limitations on housing allowance is that, one of the limitations is, what did you ask for housing allowance? And the church or Guidestone approved. So that's one factor. Another factor is, how much did you spend on housing allowance? Well, he was gonna spend $200,000, pay it all off. And the third factor is, what is the fair market rental value furnished of that house plus utilities? So how much would this house rent for? And if you took total rental payments as furnished, not just empty, but furnished, and add to that utilities. Let's say that number was 35,000. I'm just making this up. But let's say it was 35,000. Then he can't count 200,000 as housing allowance. He can only count that lowest number, which in this case was fair market rental value furnished plus utilities. And so he was only going to be able to count about 35,000 as housing. The rest of that would be taxable. So to take that out in 1 year and pay off your house, that's not a good idea. If you want to pay your house off quick, you'd want to spread that out over several years so that not as much is taxable. So if you're a minister and you're thinking about paying off your house and you're thinking about doing it with retirement money, get in touch with me and we'll talk about those situations. All right, so lump sum. Yes, you can take a lump sum. They're going to take out 20% and send it to the IRS as withholding for you, and then you'll have to deal with that amount of money at tax time. All right, another method, and so these other two methods are the main thing we're going to talk about today. Another method is called a life income annuity. That's one of your choices. One of your choices is systematic withdrawal. And these are the main two choices that we're going to talk about today. The other one that they mentioned here is fixed period and income annuity. I've never known anybody to do that. So we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about these two: life annuity and systematic withdrawal. So the life annuity is that you're in a sense buying a contract to receive a lifetime of payments from your nest egg, You're wanting to say, hey, I'll use the word guaranteed. I was not supposed to say guaranteed. But you want to receive a certain amount every month. You want to have that for the rest of your life. You want to not have to think about, will I outlive my money? You want to not think about the stock market and whether the market's up or down. I'm just going to receive an income. And that's what I want. I want this simple. I want it to be just, cut and dried, and I want to know what I'm going to get every month. That's called a life income annuity. And you notice the word life. It is for a lifetime. And so it's for the rest of your life. No matter if you live, 2 months or 20 years, 30 years. You could be 110 and you'd still be getting the money. And so that is a life income annuity. And that's one of your choices. And so you have some options with that. We'll talk about those options. And one of your other choice, I'm just going to mention it, your other choice is called a systematic withdrawal. That means that you are in charge of the money. You keep control of the account. It's your money to do with whatever you want to. And you're just going to take out some amount of money every month. I've got an account of $100,000 and I want to take out $500 a month. That's the way I want to do it. Now, if I had a $100,000 account and I take out $500 a month, will that last all of my life? Well, I don't know. Depends on how you have it invested. Yeah. Depends on how many years you live. Depends on things of that nature. And so if you want to do the systematic withdrawal, you are completely in charge, but also you've got the possibility of, what if I run out of money? So those are the two basic ways that we're going to talk about for the next few minutes. So when you do a life, and we're gonna go back to life income annuity, that's a contract for the rest of your life. And now, these are not the kind of annuities that you will be sold as you approach age 65. You know, different investment people are gonna come talk to you, hey, we want you to move your money into an annuity. And now those products are different from what we're talking about today. Those products, they have a lot of fees. They can have a termination period that for the next 10 years you can't get your money back out without penalty. They can have a lot of different, components to that are very complicated, and a lot of fees that go to the person who sold it to you. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a life income annuity, which is a simple annuity, which is just a payment for the rest of your life, and it doesn't have big fees. It does not have anything like that associated with it. Okay, while I'm talking about fees, let me mention this. Nobody, I just want you to know this, nobody at Guidestone receives a commission. Not one person at Guidestone receives a commission. They're all on salary. And so when you talk to Guidestone people, they're not trying to sell you anything. And so they do have, now you may have heard the term fiduciary. A fiduciary is a person who is bound to do what is in your best interest. And they're bound to do that. Now, people who are not fiduciaries, they can sell you stuff that might not be in your best interest. They can sell you stuff because they get a higher commission than this other product. And so now, whether Guidestone people are fiduciaries, I don't know really, because it's a church retirement plan and it's got its own set of rules. But that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because not one person is paid any kind of commission. They're all on salary. They do want to do what is best for your interest. Besides that, they don't have any other products to sell. They don't have this other fund that gives them a higher commission. Well, they've only got Guidestone funds, and there are no commissions or anything like that on the Guidestone funds. So I just wanted to say that so that you would know that. But let's go back to life income annuity. You've got some options, and let's take out this form right here. This one right here. It says retirement income estimate. So this is an imaginary situation. It is a made up situation, just to give you an example. And you can go to, how many of you have gone online to look at your account? Okay, almost everybody, good. When you go online, look at your account, you can do an estimate. That's one of the things you can do. You go to retirement, you go to the retirement page, then you go to retirement income estimate, and you could do this, what's on this page for your amount of money in your account and your age. This is just an example that you can look at for today's purposes. So now, and in fact, I will tell you, if you do look at your account, your estimate is going to be slightly higher than this example. One of the factors that's involved in this estimate is called a funding rate. And you don't need to really understand that, but the funding rate is the amount of money Guidestone thinks they're going to make. They're not going to give you your full amount at one time. You're going to get it monthly. And so they're going to have the rest of that money sitting there. And how much money do they think they can make off the money while it's just sitting there? And if you'll turn to the back of this page and look at funding rate, which is the last figure on the right side. funding rate 3%. And that's what the funding rate's been for a number of years. In fact, it went below 3%. But nowadays, the funding rate, because of other factors, funding rate has come up, it's 4.3%, right, currently, which means that you're gonna get more money than what this, if you had this amount of money, you were this age, you're gonna get a little bit more than what this sheet shows. And y'all who are doing your stuff online, you can go and you can do your own estimate, and you'll get accurate numbers for your situation. But this is just an example. That's all it is. So if I was age 66 and I had $100,000 in my account, now hopefully you got more than that. But this is used for example. So if I've got 200,000, then I could double this. 100,000 is just an easy multiplier. And so if I'm age 66, I've got $100,000 in my account, and I wanted to set up a life annuity. Let's look at the first one. 100% joint life income annuity. I'm age 66. And according to this chart, it'd be $482. Nowadays, it would be more than that. It'd be more than that. Let's see, 10, it'd be at least 10% more. It'd be like another $50 to $60 more per month, at least, just because the funding rate's different. So $482 would be my lifetime of income from that $100,000 if I wanted to do a life annuity. And you notice it says life annuity. Whose life is that? It's me. Yeah, it's mine. It's my life because I'm setting up the life annuity. Okay? Now, if I wanted to do, and I should have mentioned more. This example is for a joint life annuity. This is a person who's married. So the joint life annuity, who's the other person in that?
Spouse.
My spouse. And then 100%, what does that mean? That means that if I die first, then my spouse is going to get 100% of what we've set up. My spouse will get that for the rest of his or her life. And so 100% joint life annuity, that's for 2 lives, and they're going to get this amount of money as long as either person lives. Either person lives. Let's look down below.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. You talk about funding rate. Is that a variable rate? Is that something that can change?
Yeah, it can change.
So it's just
Now,
like
it wouldn't
interest rates.
change on you. If you set up a life annuity, you're set.
So when you go into it, if it's higher this year, as you just said, then you're set at that rate from then on. Okay,
Right, you're set at that rate from then on.
but it won't change for your contract.
Yeah, it won't change for your contract.
Okay.
That's right. Now, if it goes up, that means that future people might get a little bit more money per month. But it won't change yours.
Sorry.
Good question. No, that's a good question. So a lot of people, married people, want to do 100% joint life. That's for both of them. Now let's just look at it. Look at the options down below. And about a little past halfway down the page, it says single life annuity income. Single life. What would that mean? Single life. It'd mean just me. It would mean just me. And so if I set up a single life annuity and I was married and I die, what happens to that money? It's gone. My spouse doesn't get a dime. Okay, that would be single life. And of course, if you are single, then single life would be what you do. I have known of some situations that single life was okay. One of the questions that I like to ask is, you talk about this discussion between husband and wife, and you say, if I die first, are you okay? And then you turn that question around, if you die first, am I okay? And so you want to look at that. And this guy was a minister, and he had a Guidestone account, and his spouse was a doctor. And I don't remember why, but for some reason, he didn't get her retirement if something happened to her. And maybe it's like a pension, I guess. But anyway, so the question was, if you die first, the minister, is she okay? And the answer was, yeah, she's fine. She's fine because she's got a big retirement. And then turn that question around, if he dies first, if she dies first, is he okay? And the answer to that question was no, because he wasn't getting her retirement.
So when you say, I don't mean to ask so many questions, but
No.
when you say yes and no, they're covered, but are we talking about annuities and pensions here? Or are we talking about something like just a retirement IRA, a traditional or a Roth, and they can't get it when they die? We're just talking about pensions and annuities.
I think that was probably a pension.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just saying that's a good question. It's a good question to ask between husband and wife. That's a great question to ask. If I die first, are you okay? And if you die first, am I okay? So, because like, for example, my mom, when my dad died, my mom only got half from that point on. And so the question would be, if he died first, would she be okay? And that was a true question, because he did die first. And so that's just a good question between husband and wife to check on those things. If I die first, how much am I getting? How much would you be getting? If you died first, how much would I be getting? So anyway, the answer on this guy, the answer was he could have done single life, because even though he's married, he could have done single life because she was okay without him, financially. Financially, she was okay without him. But for most of us as married couples, if we want to do a life annuity, we want to do 100% joint life annuity. And that means that when I die, my spouse is going to get same paycheck month in and month out. Okay? So 100% joint life, that's what that means. Now, number one, 100% joint life, that's both husband and wife. They'll get it as long as they live, even if they live to be 110. And so it's $482. And it'd be more than that now, because the funding rate's gone up. Okay, number one, they both die. They go on their cruise around the world. They have the best time in the world. It's just been the best thing that ever happened to them. And right before they get back to port, their ship sinks. They're gone. They're gone. Okay? What do their kids get?
Nothing.
Yeah, they set up 100% joint life, and that's all they did. Their kids get nothing. And their kids are going to be mad. They're going to be mad at Guidestone. What do you mean? Where'd that money go? Where'd that money go? And we didn't get any of it. Why didn't we get that money? But if your kids don't get that money, who did it? You did it. That's the way you set it up. And I've known of a lot of people, especially in ministry, known a lot of people who said, hey, we need the money, and our kids are so much better off than we are, we don't care. And so that could be one of your choices, to set up 100% joint life and not include your kids. You could. All right, let's look at number two.
If you put in there, we didn't care.
Yep. Good. Okay, let's look at number 2. Number 2 is one of your options. It's not automatic, but it's one of your options if you choose that option. And that option is to have a cash refund. And so this couple chooses number 2. They're going to get a little bit less money. They're going to get $471 per month in this example, but they chose cash refund. So they receive their first month retirement check, and they get that money and put it in the bank. They go on their round the world cruise, and so right coming back into port, the ship goes down, they're gone. What did their kids get in that if they've chosen number 2? What did their
Balance
kids
of
get?
the fund,
This $100,000 minus the 1 month that they received.
so they get the full balance.
And the
of
kids would get the balance of that money. Kids would get what's left of the principal balance. And so in this case, it'd be $100,000 minus one check that they received.
So what happens if the person lives way beyond that money being spent, and there'll be 0 when he receives, is that correct?
Right. Now, that's exactly right. So that money, we're talking about the principal balance. We're not talking about, so the principal balance will last somewhere in the range of about 17 years. And now, you remember I said, you're still getting the money if you're 110. Well, that's way beyond 17 years. How am I still getting that money?
Annuity.
And the way that I'm still getting that money is because Guidestone invested the money. They're making some money off my money. Another way that they're getting the money is just actuarial tables. It's the law of the averages. That some people are going to live a short time, some people are going to live a long time, and they're averaging this out that they can pay out that benefit to everybody, including those who are 110 years old. So if I'm still living, if my spouse is still living, we're still getting it, even though we've gone past 17 years. But once we've gone about 17 years, the principal balance has been paid out. What do our kids get? Nothing, because the principal balance has been paid out. Okay? See how that works?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, remember, when you see the word life, it is for a lifetime. And even if you set up option number 2, that doesn't affect you at all. It doesn't affect you in any way at all. It just affects what happens to your kids. And do they get the money? Now I'm using the kids. You can set up any beneficiary you want to. So it doesn't have to be your kids. Was there a question? Okay. All right. So number 2, cash refund. You take the amount of principal balance minus the payments that have been made so far, and your children would receive what's left. But if you're 110, you're still getting it. That doesn't affect you. Number 3, this is very similar to number 2, but it's based on a period of time, not on the amount of money. So 20-year option. What that means is that if we both die, not one of us, but both of us die, within 20 years, our kids are going to get what's left of 20 years worth. That's what that one means. So if we both die, not one of us, but both of us die within 15 years, our kids would get 5 years worth. If we both die at year 21, our kids get nothing. That's the 20-year option. Now you notice that these options cost you some money per month, and that's in order to pay for the option. And you can choose to do those options if you want to, if you want to try to provide something to your heirs. Okay, but it's your choice. You don't have to. And so life annuity is one of your choices that you'll have in receiving your money. All right, down below, you've got this next one, annuity with an 1% annual increase. Guidestone made that available because some people asked for it. I've not known anybody that's done it, because what it does is it reduces the amount that you're receiving so much. It's going to take you 10 years to break even and another 10 years to really be to the good. And it takes so long to make up for that I don't know anybody who's done it. The only reason Guidestones do it is because somebody wanted it. You know, some people have asked for it. Okay? Now, below that, you could do a single life income annuity, and that's one of your choices. One of your choices is a 50% joint life. So if you wanted to do a 50% joint life, you died first, your spouse, your wife, your spouse would get half that amount of money. And you do have that choice. You could set it up that way if you wanted to. That's another choice that you have. So life income annuity, that's one of your choices, and you would get it for a lifetime, for the rest of your life, no matter how long you live. So that it's a contract. Now, one other thing that's important about this contract is once you do it, it's done. It is a contract. You cannot undo it.
Okay.
You cannot get your money back. It is a contract. Okay? That's one of your choices. All right, let's talk about this. Next choice is a lot easier to talk about, and it's called systematic withdrawal. So, bottom of the page, you see systematic withdrawal. And what they recommend that you take out is about 4% of the account per year. And that's a safe withdrawal rate that hopefully that account will last all of your lifetime. About 4% of the account per year. So if you had $100,000, you'd be taking out $4,000 a year. $333 a month is what you'd be taking out. Now you see that's a lot less money per month. And that's the reason that a lot of people choose the life income annuity, is it gives them more money per month. But the pluses for the systematic withdrawal is, number one, I still have the nest egg. It's still mine. I'm just taking money out of it per month. Another advantage is I control it. I can invest it any way I want to. And I might do better than what this life annuity does, over a long period of time. I have the control. That's another advantage. And if I took out 4% of the account per year, and I made 5% per year or so, then I'd still have the nest egg. When I died, I'd still have that nest egg, and that nest egg could I could leave $100,000 towards my kids. So those are the advantages of the of the systematic withdrawal.
Lee, I have a question.
Sure.
On the systematic, and it also applies to the lifetime annuity. Let's just say there was $500,000 when you set up this annuity initially, but it's at Guidestone. You're taking your monthly withdrawals, and the market crashes. Well, now instead of $500,000 in there, you've got $300,000 or $400,000. So is Guidestone going to follow the market and you go down on the ship and you die and your family
Okay.
gets the
Now,
rest?
If I have done
What are
the,
they gonna get?
if I've done the life annuity, nothing changes. If I'm controlling it myself,
But I'm referring to the cash refund difference. Say you die before you have drawn it all out, and your beneficiaries would be getting the cash refund
Yeah.
balance. Are they getting a balance on current market when you? Or-
they're getting what the balance was originally.
Okay,
when I
so that
started.
never changes.
Yeah, that never changes.
Okay.
As long as guys don't have money to pay.
Yeah.
So no longer fluctuates with the market like it
Yeah,
does.
if you do a life annuity, you don't think about the market anymore.
Gotcha.
You're done thinking about the market.
That's comforting.
Is there the option of starting with the systematic and then 10 years down the road, just say, I think I'll sell it out to the annuity deal? Is that?
Yes, yes. Now, you can go one way, but you can't go the other. I can start out with systematic withdrawal and then move to the life annuity. But if I start with the life annuity, I'm locked in and I can't change it to systematic withdrawal.
Can you do like a 50-50, 50%?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, you can do a combination. You can do 50-50 or whatever amount you want to do towards a life annuity and whatever amount you want to do towards systematic withdrawal. You can divide it up. In fact, you can divide it up among all three. I can say, hey, I need to pay off my car, so I'm going to take a lump sum to pay off the car. Then I can do systematic withdrawal on part of it and life annuity on another part. It is possible to do all three. All right? So that's your options. Lump sum, systematic withdrawal, or life annuity. And you don't have to do any certain one. You can do any combination of those. What questions do you have about withdrawal strategy?
How soon before planning retirement should you do this paperwork?
Okay, paperwork, they like to have it in, that's a good question. They like to have the paperwork in 3 months ahead. Now, they can do it with about a month's notice, but they like to have the paperwork in 3 months ahead. If you're gonna set up a withdrawal, then you'll want to notify Guidestone and get all your paperwork done. You will have to send in paperwork. Now, you can get the forms that you need online. You can print them out on your own computer, but you will need to send that in because they do need your signature. Now, on the withdrawal, I don't know what the maximum is, but you can do a withdrawal, online on your computer. They don't need a signature for that, and I'm sure there's some kind of maximum that they would have to have a signature, but on the other two, the systematic withdrawal and the life annuity, they do need your signature. So you can print out the forms, but then you at some point you're going to have to sign it and mail it in.
Follow up?
Uh-huh.
If your spouse should pass away before his retirement age, he takes retirement.
Okay.
How does that impact the spouse?
On Guidestone
Retirement.
stuff, Guidestone. Okay. Well, it does affect it if you want a life annuity. If I am 71 today, if I'm 71, my spouse dies, and so I get remarried, and I remarry somebody who is 20 years younger than me, and now I want to set up a life annuity, and I want a 100% joint life annuity, and so that's based on both of our lives. What's going to happen to that check?
Smaller.
It's going to be a whole lot smaller because it's based on both of our lives, and she's going to live a lot longer than I have. Now, already for women usually outlive men by about 5 years. So already women are going to live longer than we do. if she's 20 years younger than me, then she's definitely gonna, and that's one of the factors. So if I take retirement earlier and I want to do a life annuity, I'm gonna get less money. If I wait till I'm age 70 to start my life annuity, I'm gonna get more money because I've got fewer years to live. And if I marry a spouse that's a whole lot younger, then we're gonna get less money because it's based on her life expectancy too.
Does Miss Lynette know that you occasionally think about marrying?
We won't tell her. We won't tell her today.
Lee,
Yes,
you mentioned earlier that spouses could participate in Guidestone.
yes.
Is there a time frame that they would have to participate before being able to participate in the actual retirement?
Anytime, now they do need to be, generally they do need to be working, and, but they can have their own IRA.
Right.
Now, they can't participate in the church retirement plan because that's an employer plan. They'd have to be employed by the church or association. Yeah.
But say they joined up, got the money rolled in, and died within 30 days, that they, because they already have the application and everything submitted, they would still be able to receive, or depending on which they select, the benefit.
Well, now let me say this. A spouse setting up an IRA with Guidestone, the life annuity is not going to be one of their choices.
Okay.
They're going to have to. It's going to be systematic. Well, it's going to be lump sum or systematic withdrawal.
Right.
They don't have that life annuity choice. Only those in the church retirement plan have the life annuity choice, and they can't. Others can't do it. Now, we were just talking about a couple of y'all work for WMU and for the retirement centers, and I think y'all's plan is set up the same way, and I think that y'all do have the life annuity choice. But somebody who has just an IRA with Guidestone, they don't have that life annuity. That's not one of their choices. Okay? All right, so everybody okay on this? This is kind of hard to understand, and that's part of your choices. Now, let's look a little bit at Medicare. Systematic withdrawal we talked about. Of course, single sum, we talked about that. You can receive a lump sum, but it is subject to 20%. Okay. Housing allowance. Anybody have any housing allowance questions in retirement? You can, with your Guidestone account, you can do a housing allowance even after you're no longer working for that church.
But Lee, is that just what we actually spend on housing?
Yeah, it's the smallest of those three factors. It's what you ask for from Guidestone in this case, what you spent, or what is the fair market rental value of the house furnished plus utilities. Whichever of those three numbers is the least, is the smallest. And so it would have a lot to do with how much you spend. Yeah. So one of the questions that comes up a lot is, what if I paid off my house? Yes, you can still have housing allowance, you just don't have as many expenses. And you don't have that payment anymore. But it also would be the least of those three factors. How much did I ask for and how much did I spend? And I'm likely, if I've paid off the house, I'm likely to be spending less than before I paid it off.
If the minister dies, does his spouse get housing allowance?
That's a great question. The answer is no. There's only, in Southern Baptist life, there's one exception to that. And that is if you're IMB missionaries. Because both husband and wife are commissioned. And so the wife, husband dies, the wife would get housing allowance because she's credentialed. Yeah, but for the rest of us, we die and our spouses don't get housing allowance anymore. All right, let's go on and talk a little bit about Social Security in our remaining amount of time. Oh, well, Medicare, I should say. Oh, I'm backing up. No wonder I wasn't getting past this. I'm backing up. Okay, investment basis. Let's look at this one sheet real quick, because we do need to say a couple of things about this related to retirement. This choose your approach, take that sheet out. Guidestone has 3 basic ways to invest, and to invest your money. And there's 3 basic ways. The first way, and you'll see this over on the side, do it for me. You want the simplest approach. And so these 2 options are among that simplest approach. And so the first one at the top is called a date target fund. A date target fund. And Guidestone calls these My Destination. So there's a My Destination 2025, 2035, 2045, 2055. And those numbers correspond to the decade that you think you might retire. And so if I want to retire in the year 2045 or that decade, 2040s, then I would select that fund. And what that fund does is during these years, it starts out aggressively. It's almost all stock market mutual funds. And as I approach retirement, it gets more conservative. They invest in some bonds and some other things that are more conservative. I'm not going to have quite the roller coaster ride that I have when it's invested in stock market. So you'll see these, and our sheet, it's not, the contrast is not as good as it used to be. The dark color represents stock market mutual funds, that little circle there. And then the lighter color represents other things like bonds and other fixed instruments. And so you'll notice that when I'm in my 20s and 30s, it's all in the stock market. When I'm in my 40s and 50s, I got a little bit in bonds. When I'm in my 60s, it gets to be about half and half. And then later on down the road, eventually it's going to get to about 3/4 in bonds and stuff like that. That's the date target fund. And so the idea is that we need to invest this money, it needs to grow, it needs to make money, and that's the stock market. And as I get closer to retirement, it's going to be less aggressive so that it doesn't go down as much as it did. But also it doesn't earn as much as it did in terms of over a 20, 30-year period of time. But you'll notice that even when I get to retirement, I'm still about 50-50. And I never quit having some money in stocks because this money's got to make money. If I'm going to take out 4% of the account per year, but I'm only making 2% in terms of earnings, what's going to happen? You know, I'm going to run out of money. So I want this money to earn more than that, and to do so, to earn more than that, I need to have some money invested in stock market type mutual funds. So that's what the date target fund does. That's the easiest choice. It changes with me. Now, second choice, down below that, you'll see the words aggressive, growth, balanced. Oh, you say balanced, moderate, and conservative. Those funds are set. The aggressive fund is all in stock market mutual funds. The growth fund is 3/4 in stock market mutual funds, 1/4 in bonds. The balanced fund is about 50-50, or moderate fund is about 50-50. And then the conservative fund is a quarter in stocks and about 3/4 in bonds. Now, those are easy answers. You just put your money in there and let it go. But the difference is, let's say I start out in the growth or in the aggressive fund, and I get to be 70 years of age and I've not done anything, it's still in the aggressive fund. So that's the difference between that one and the one above it. Is the one above it has an automatic plan to become more conservative as time goes on. These blended funds down the second choice, they won't change unless you change it. And so those are good, easy choices. They're just not going to change as time goes on. And then the third choice is, how do I invest my money? Is you pick it yourself. And Guidestone actually has something like 27 funds, something like that. It's a bunch. And that kind of makes my head spin when I think about all the different choices that there are potentially. But I can make those choices if I want to. And so Guidestone has 3 different ways to choose. And as you approach retirement, that would have to do with how do I want my money done as I approach retirement? Do I want it all done aggressively? Do I want it more conservative than that? Do I want to be in an easy choice like the date target fund?
I did, I talked to my Guidestone person this past week.
Uh-huh.
And I did not know that at this point, they could set up for me just date-wise, where they would make the switch on pre-approved dates, and I wouldn't have to think about it again, because mine is still all in aggressive stuff. 'Cause
Yeah.
I was one of those young guys that got started and people said, just let it ride, and I have.
Yeah.
But
Let it ride is a good thing.
Now it's getting to that point, if
Yeah.
I want to. So, I think that's where I'm headed, is kind of setting us dates to take more risk out of it and let them do it when that date hits.
Yeah, that is good. And Guidestone does have some advisors, and you can pay for an advisement service for them to help advise your funds. And it's really, it doesn't cost very much. It's a percentage each year, so you don't have to say, okay, we're going to bill you $250. No, it would be some kind of percentage, and it's pretty reasonable. Yeah. All right, let's look at some things about.
Lee, I've got a question on the page you're on right now.
Okay.
The top line where you got to living in retirement. You said even living in retirement, you still would keep a portion of your money in stocks.
Uh-huh.
That ties back to the question I asked earlier. If you purchase an annuity with them at retirement, you're no longer tied to
Right.
stocks,
That's correct.
right? So is that irrelevant?
Yeah, this would be,
That
you keep a
situation.
portion of your retirement. That would be if you're headed towards systematic withdrawal,
Gotcha. Okay.
and you're still going to control the money. That's a good question. If I go to the life annuity, I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a really good question. All right, let's talk about Medicare just a little bit. I know our time is limited. Okay. All right. But what is Medicare? Medicare is in 4 parts. Part A is hospitalization. Part A is hospitalization, and you pay for this all your life through your Medicare taxes. And so Medicare Part A is hospitalization. Medicare Part A is free. Once you get to Medicare age, it doesn't cost you anything. Now, it does have a deductible. That deductible for going into the hospital is pretty big. It's a pretty big deductible. So you'll want to have supplementary insurance, a supplement policy to help pay for those deductibles. But Medicare Part A is hospitalization, it's free. Part B for Medicare is your other things. Part B is things like, Part B is things like your doctors and X-ray and lab and tests and stuff like that. That's in Part B, and Medicare does pay for some things in Part B, but you'll want to have supplemental insurance to help pay for those out-of-pocket deductible kind of things and co-pays. Part B is going to cost you. And so when you get to be on Medicare and your retirement age, past age 65, your Part B is going to cost you $160. I'm trying to remember. It's about $160 a month. And the reason that I don't remember is it's taken out of my Social Security check, and I don't, it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind. I don't know what it was. But it's about 160, and it can be more than that. If you make more money, your Medicare Part B could cost you even more than that. Depends on what your income is. But and that $160, that changes every year, goes up some every year. And so Part B does cost you, but Part B is for your doctors and tests and X-rays and stuff like that. Okay, Part C, well, I'll skip that and go to Part D. Part D is your prescription drug plan. So when you get on Medicare, you're going to need a prescription drug plan because Medicare does not cover any drugs whatsoever. So you'll need that Part D. And Part D can be covered by your supplemental insurance plan that you have for Medicare. And then Part C is a weird part. It's called an Advantage plan. And you can opt to have an Advantage plan. And what that means is you're going to an insurance company and you're saying, insurance company, you take care of my Medicare, and they get paid by Medicare to take care of you. And so the Part C Advantage plans, most of the time they're cheaper. Sometimes they have some extra benefits, like they might cover dental, they might cover vision, they might cover other things because the insurance company set it up that way. And a lot of times they're cheaper, but you're really not in Medicare anymore. The insurance company is just getting paid to do what Medicare would have done. And so those are Advantage plans.
Is it true you're also locked in once you do that? You can't come back out?
You could come back out, but it's hard.
Okay.
A lot of times when you come back out, say you get in an Advantage plan and you want to switch back to a different plan, you want to change back to a regular being in Medicare and supplemental insurance. Then you got to qualify medically. And so can you qualify medically? And so that could be a problem. That could be a problem. That in effect, you could be sort of locked into.
Why do people opt for Part C? Why do they go from Medicare to Part C?
Mainly because it's cheaper. Well, two things. Number one, it's cheaper. Number two, they see the extra benefits it might provide. It might provide dental, vision, other kinds of things.
So the Advantage plans, do they not have to choose on an annual basis?
Yeah, you do. You choose on an annual basis, but it might be harder to get back into a regular plan because you might have to qualify. Yeah.
So if they offer all these things, why would you want to leave them and go back to a Medicare plan?
Well, okay. So while some of the, some of the Advantage plans are only for a particular state or locale. Some of the hospitals do some. I was trying to think of. There's one here in Alabama that's done by one of the hospitals, and so if I move to Mississippi, I've got to get a new plan. And so some of them are very localized. My mother was on an Advantage plan, is on Blue Cross Advantage, and she was very happy with it. And it did do what she needed to do. But there are some considerations that you need to think about if you get on an Advantage plan. All right, let's move on. Medicare supplement plans is supplemental insurance to help pay for the deductibles, the co-pays, things like that Medicare does not cover. And most of the time, the supplemental plan is going to be how you're going to do your Part D, your prescriptions. And I'll tell you the Medicare, it works pretty good, especially if you got a good supplemental insurance. Medicare works pretty well. My wife had knee surgery last year. I've had this heart surgery this year, and we've got good supplemental insurance. I haven't seen a bill. So I've been real pleased with that. And I'm a little surprised with it. Let me just give you a tip that this has nothing to do with what we're talking about today, but just sort of a tip. Look at your drug costs, and of course, drug costs is going to be a big part of how you choose a supplemental plan. If you're on name brand, really expensive drugs, then you probably don't want to do an Advantage plan because they're going to steer you towards generic, cheap stuff, and it's going to push you that way in some way or another. That's going to determine a lot about what kind of plan do you want. But the other thing is look at your insurance and see what it does about your drugs. And that's one thing that I've kind of learned is we have a drug plan, and our drug plan for us on Medicare, it's got a $500 deductible, and then it's going to pay. You'll have a copay like $20 a month or $90 for 3 months or something like that. And so that's what our drug plan does. First part of the year, this is just a tip for free. First part of the year, I was on generics. I was on 4 generics. My total drug cost for the entire year was going to be about $200. Less than my deductible. And at that time, it was cheaper for me to use a good RX coupon, pay for it out of pocket, not involve my insurance. And in fact, I was getting some drugs that were like $7 a month. If I was using my insurance, even past the deductible, my insurance might cost me the $20. Now they may have done the lesser charge, but they could have done the $20 that your normal drugs are. And I'd be paying less than that. So why use my insurance if I could be paying for it out of pocket cheaper? Now that I'm on a handful of medications, and some of them are expensive, I'll want to use my insurance. And then the most I'm gonna pay is like, $90 for a 3-month supply or something like that is the most I'm going to pay. So the key point is look at what your costs are and look at can I even do it cheaper by paying out of pocket or paying out of pocket with something like a good RX coupon, and that might be possible. All right, so Medicare, I'm pleased with it. It works pretty well, and so that's once we get past age 65, we can get into into Medicare, and that's gonna become our insurance. What questions do you have? Gosh, we're almost out of time, and I wanted to have a little bit of time for questions. Sorry, kind of ran through that about Medicare a little faster than I wanted to. But what questions do you have about Medicare, about Social Security, or about these retirement options that we've got? Anything? I feel like that we've gone so fast that everybody's sort of like in a daze. Anybody have any questions? Okay, well, all right. I'm going to have prayer. We'll dismiss us, but I'll be hanging around for a while. If you've got questions, I'll be glad to help deal with it. Thank you for coming. I hope this has been helpful to you in thinking about the retirement choices that we will be having. I would suggest that you come to this more than once and kind of hear about your choices, and you want to think about it. You want to think about it a long time. And then when you hear this, sometimes you'll hear something different. Sometimes you'll hear, and it might make a difference in the kind of choice that you choose on down the road. So thanks for being here. Let's have a word of prayer. Father, thank you for today. Thank you for everybody who's come. Thank you for the possibility that we have to enjoy years of retirement. And just thank you that we live in a day and age in which that's a possibility. And thank you for the work that Guidestone does for us. And we just pray that you would help us to make very, very wise choices in all that we do. And as we think about these kind of choices. Father, watch over us as we travel back home. And thank you for the people who are here and the fact that they serve you. In Jesus' name, amen.